Yo, what is going on? I appreciate everybody for tuning in. We're going to jump right. I'm Marcus. Here we do attorney reactions to current events and trending news. We got a few stories we're going to get through today. Let's dive in because your boy is kind of tired. Let's go ahead and jump in. Shout out to everybody in the chat, everybody who watching live, everybody who watching on the replay. As always, I'm appreciative of y'all. Definitely very grateful. Now let's talk about this first story. It's a pastor who looks like he just want to be hardhead. Look like he has a deal on the table. He doesn't want to take the deal. Let's tune into this video and we're going to talk about it. Let's get it.
News update. A Miami Gardens pastor accused of stealing back in court today. Eric Redden rejected a plea deal and faces up to 65 years behind bars if convicted at trial. Local 10 investigator Jeff Weiss here live in the newsroom with what happened in court. Jeff.
Pastor Redden seems to be rolling the dice, and today the judge made sure he clearly understands the risk. He's facing up to 65 years in prison. The state's offer just a year and a day.
Okay, so this pastor is facing 65 years in prison. The state offered him 1 year and 1 day. First of all, let's explain why. Hey, shout out to you, Maddie. Thanks for tuning in. Why would someone be offered 1 year and 1 day? If we're in state court, the reason the person is offered a sentence of 1 year and 1 day is because it's the threshold to classify a felony. Most felonies have a part of a definition involved where the sentence has to be more than 1 year. Misdemeanors are typically has a threshold of a year or less. So anytime you see that 1 year and 1 day, is prosecutors saying like, okay, your crime was a felony. We want to make sure you eat this felony, but we aren't going to hit you over the head sentence wise. So we're going to offer you 1 year and 1 day in state court. That's done so you can classify the defendant and lock them into pleading to a felony conviction. At the federal level, why would someone get 1 year and 1 day? Essentially, a 1 year and 1 day sentence, it activates certain benefits that a federal inmate could get. You can get credit for time served when you have longer than a year sentence. You can also participate in some programs that are only available to persons who have over a year sentence. So that's the difference between state and federal court. Why would someone get a plea agreement for 366 days? It's because it's a state charge in this case. They want to be able to get them to a felony, and a felony is an offense that's punishable by longer than a year in custody. So he's looking at 66 years. He's turning down a plea for a year and a day.
Behind bars.
So it's my understanding that you are facing a total of 65 years in state prison if you are found guilty at trial.
Inside a Miami-Dade courtroom, Judge Christine Hernandez laid out what's at stake. The deal on the table could keep Miami Gardens pastor Eric Redden out of prison for decades. The state's offer: 366 days in state prison, 10 years probation, restitution to the victim. It is a deal Redden rejected.
This is your case. This is your...
Real quick, let's rewind it back. And I know somebody's going to be like, you paused it too much. The news story, y'all can always find it online. I have to take these intermittent pauses for YouTube's sake. But this is a really good deal, considering this guy's looking at over 60 years in custody. A year and a day, 10 years probation, restitution to the victims. Great deal. Anybody who is worth their salt as a defense attorney would advise them to take it. This is why the judge is actually making it clear that this gentleman is aware of what he's doing, because typically as a defense attorney during my defense attorney days, if I had a situation like this where a client didn't want to take a sweetheart plea like this, I would actually make them sign a document that outlines what their plea agreement is, what their exposure is if they decline a plea agreement, and that they're signing to, again, decline that plea agreement. Because if you don't, what will happen is he declines this plea agreement, the dude goes to trial, gets 40 years, then he reaches out to the Bar Association and says that you provided ineffective assistance of counsel. That's normally how it works. So I would always make him sign something.
This is your case. This is your life. These are the decisions that you have to make with consultation with your lawyer. I just want to make sure, do you understand the plea offer that's being extended to you? Do you understand what you're facing if a jury finds you guilty of these charges?
Pastor Redden charged with organized fraud, exploitation of the elderly, theft, and grand theft. Those are charges that stem from a 2017 Local 10 News investigation. It was back then Edward Fuller, a retired...
Okay, point number two. Point number one, this is a great deal. The guy should take it. If he doesn't, if he goes to trial, he's going to get burnt. Point number two, his crimes involve committing fraud against senior citizens. If you have a seasoned black man like this go on the stand talking about how a pastor finessed him out of his life savings or his homes or whatever the hell it is, the jury is not going to have no empathy for you, which is another reason why this pastor should take the deal.
Postal worker told us Redden convinced him to transfer part ownership of his home under the pretense of helping secure a loan for construction. Instead, Redden allegedly sold the house without Fuller's knowledge, kept all the money, $267,000. There seems to be a pattern. Redden recently accepted a no-contest plea in Broward County, agreeing to pay nearly $200,000 in restitution to victims in Davie and Lauderdale Lakes who also say Redden tried to take their properties under false pretenses. Plus, a grand theft auto charge against Redden recently dropped in Broward could...
These pastors are out here doing the most and doing the absolutely worst. I wonder if these persons are members of the congregation. I can't recall if they said that. I'm guessing that they are because there's probably some. If for you to sign over half of your home to somebody, it has to be somebody that you trust. So I'm assuming that these persons are likely members of the congregation.
Soon resurface in Dade.
This case is likely coming back for Mr. Redden, and there's an arrest warrant that may be drafted in the next few days.
Redden wants to take the Fuller case to trial. Not sure if he's going to change his mind. And right now that trial is set for July 7th. We, of course, will keep you posted.
Okay, so this is a story of somebody who's getting a good deal, who's declining the deal. And if they go to trial, they are going to get burned. Well, why would a defendant do this? Well, it's one of two reasons. One, you want to go to trial because the government doesn't have the evidence to prove their case. But I suspect this is the opposite. This is probably some defendants are just jerks and they feel like, you know what, if you're going to get me, I'm going to make you work for it. If you have to have a trial, generally, if I'm a prosecutor, once I offer you a deal and you decline it, I'm never going to offer you a deal as good as the first deal that I offered you. Two, if I actually have to go through and start preparing for trial, again, if you decide in the middle of the trial, hey, I want to resolve this pursuant to a plea agreement, you aren't going to get a deal as good as the original deal. Now, okay, so this pastor, looking at 65 plus years, offered a deal for 1 year and 1 day, 366 days. We talked about why you do that at the state and federal level, why someone would get a 366-day sentence in a plea agreement. Now, this was day one. Let's take a listen at what this pastor decided to do in day two.
A lot of Miami Gardens pastor who just last week said no to a plea deal did a complete about face in court today. Pastor Eric Redden was facing up to 65 years in prison after a Local 10 News investigation exposed how he ripped off an elderly man and then took his house. Our own Jeff Weinstein was back in court today for the unexpected reversal and has the latest now from our newsroom. Jeff.
Kelvin, Eric Redden has now agreed to spend 364 days in the Miami-Dade County Jail.
Okay, so now, hey, let's talk about this because this is actually a change from the original plea. Smartly, he took the agreement. Now the plea agreement is changed from 366 days, he didn't want to take it, to 364 days. Again, we're going to see what they say in this article because I didn't even actually watch this story, but it actually worked out in his favor. He had just taken those 2 days off could potentially be the difference between having a misdemeanor and having a felony. So He was fighting over those 2 days. Those 2 days, he decided to take those 2 days because, hey, I don't want to take it. And it looks like it actually worked out in his favor. So, hey, shout out to him. It was really risky. He had a very good prosecutor, because if I was a prosecutor, once you decline my plea agreement and it's talked about on the news, I'd be damned if I'm going to offer you the same thing. Now, this tells me one of few things. It doesn't tell me that the defendant was smart. What it tells me is if the government was willing to do this and reduce it from 366 to 364 days, potentially lowering it from a felony to a misdemeanor, their evidence was probably skeptical as well. So that's something that was an unknown on the front side. His attorney likely knew that the evidence was sketched and was like, hey, you could potentially hold out and see if we can push this to a misdemeanor. So that's actually a good case. Shout out to him. The first deal was a good deal, unbeknownst at the time. His attorney may have known something related to the discovery that they received, that the evidence was kind of garbage, and it looks like it worked out in his favor by getting those 2 days shaved off.
Pay $180,000 to the victim and turn himself in July 15th.
It's my understanding that you wish to change your previously entered plea of not guilty to a plea of guilty in exchange for the state's offer.
The plea he rejected last week is similar to a plea Pastor Eric Redden accepted today.
Do you understand the charges that you're facing before this court?
Yes.
The deal, 364 days in the Miami-Dade County Jail, followed by 15 years probation and $180,000 restitution to the victim, Edward Fuller. Redden is the pastor of the New Beginning Missionary Baptist Church.
Are you sure you want to proceed with the plea?
We just want closure, Judge.
It was 2017 when retired postal worker Edward Fuller told Local 10 News that Pastor Redden had ripped.
All right, so we already saw that part of the story. So it's a different plea. It's a different agreement. 366 days to 364. More probation on the 364 days. Less was on the 366 days. The likely rationale for the switch, again, at state court, because this is state court, felonies are classified as offenses that have a sentence term longer than 1 year in custody. That's why you see pleas for 366 days. The fact that it went to 364, it leads me to believe that it might be a possibility that those felony charges were in fact reduced to misdemeanors. Let's go ahead and see. I'm trying to skip through to see if they discuss that, to see if that's the case. But that's why something like that would happen. Let's go ahead and pick up from here.
Busted Redden because he was a pastor. Instead, Redden sold the home without Fuller's knowledge, kept the money. Redden was later charged with organized fraud, exploitation of the elderly, theft, and grand theft. Fuller has since moved out of state with family for health reasons.
Pastor, anything to say, Pastor?
Redden was taken into custody today, but not for the Fuller case, but on a warrant related to a separate grand theft auto combined with the Fuller case as part of the same plea agreement. The charge will be completely reopened in Miami-Dade. Now that charge will be combined with the Fuller case as part of the same plea agreement. Redden will be temporarily released to get his affairs in order and has agreed to turn himself in July 15th to begin serving the 364-day sentence. That temporary release comes with a stern warning.
If you're rearrested, if you're cited, if you're arrested for a traffic ticket, if you do anything that's in violation of this plea agreement, you forego those 364 days. You understand me?
Yes.
Again, Redden has agreed to turn himself in July 15th. After his release, if he violates that probation, he faces 30 years in state prison. In the newsroom, Jeff Weins here, Local 10 News.
Okay, so I thought that was an interesting story. It was a change in the plea. I thought the first deal was sweet. The second deal, if it was a misdemeanor and not a felony, it's a much better deal. I seriously doubt if that's the case, but that's normally why you see that at a state court. The only reason I doubt it is because the amount of time that's hanging over his, well, Nah, he might be. He might be good. He may have gotten that bust down to a misdemeanor. It would be interesting to know, but that's normally why you see that 366, more than a year felony, less than 365 days. Uh, you're looking at a misdemeanor. So that's what I think the difference is likely is. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at this next story. Now, this next story is interesting. Okay, we talk all the time about, was an officer justified? Was a person justified in use of force, defending himself? Is it self-defense? Is it not self-defense? This story is interesting because it's about a young man who was tased by law enforcement, and one of the prongs of the taser actually hit him in his eye. I will tell you that is a serious thing. How do I know? Because I had a client who was tased by police. The taser hit him in his eye, and we had to get him to the hospital immediately. They actually held him in custody. At his first appearance, I essentially had to convey the court the importance of getting this guy to an actual hospital, not just the jail doctors, because an infection in your eye is very close to your brain, and it could lead to serious, serious problems. So let's take a look at this story. I know you hear somebody got tased in the eye, and y'all automatically probably leaning, the cop did something wrong. But let's see, was there a justification or rationale for the officer using his taser with regard to this story? Let's dive in, take a look at it. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments.
Dominic Bradford says he has permanent damage to his right eye after being tased in the face by a Robbins police officer. Now, the Robbins Police Department claims Bradford was hostile when he was asked to leave a convenience store. But Bradford believes the use of force was unjustified. The ABC 7i team has obtained video of the tasing incident that followed, and we want to warn you, some of the footage and images might be hard to watch.
All right, so this dude's about to take his glasses off. I'm just warning y'all, his eye looked a little wild because it's stitched up, but he got tased. One of the prongs hit him in his eye. And just so you know how a taser works, you shoot a taser, two prongs come out, but they don't come out and go parallel directly across. They go out at an angle. And the reason that those prongs shoot out of the gun at the angle is because the more distance at the time the officer shoot it, the wider space that those prongs go. And a wider point of connection makes for a better electrical current. So if one prong hits you in the chest and the other one hits you in the thigh, that wider space creates a better electrical current for the taser to actually work.
I never look the same again or feel the same, quite frankly.
Dominic Bradford's right eyelid is stitched together after he underwent 4 surgical procedures. The Chicago man says he may never see out of this eye again after he was tased in the face by a police officer.
Now, real quick, hey, this man is nicely dressed. He's soft-spoken. I want y'all to pay attention to his demeanor here because we got to see what's going on in the body cam footage.
This is what my reality is now. I don't wish this on my worst enemy.
The incident happened on March 18th. The 22-year-old says he and his friends were on their way home from a sports bar and they stopped by a convenience store in Robbins. He says a store clerk thought he had recognized him.
That became a minor back and forth of, I think I've seen you. No, you haven't. I've never been here before. That's when I knocked on the glass for the item behind the counter.
Bradford says a Robbins police officer who happened to be in the store asked him to stop knocking on the glass.
The cop just asked him to stop knocking on the glass. Let's get all the facts.
He says words were exchanged and he was asked to leave. Bradford says he followed orders and left. And that's where the officer's body cam video begins.
Okay, so we got the foundation laid. He's in the store trying to buy something. Him and the clerk, I saw you before. They have some words. He knocks on the window. Now, I don't know how they define knock. Was it a knock, like knocking on the door? Or was it a boom, 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 banging, as if I'm trying to bang aggressively to knock on the door? I don't know. But he knocks on the window. The officer tells him to stop knocking on the window. Words are exchanged. The officer tells him to leave the store. This is where the body cam footage picks up. And the question I want you all to think is, was the use of the taser justified? Was the officer in a reasonable threat of bodily harm or some type of assault contact.
You come back up to the glass and you seem frustrated, upset. You seem to be.
All right. Now look at this. Look at it. I want y'all to look at this picture right here, okay? Because we got to get full context. This guy's real soft-spoken in this interview, but this is exactly at the time the officer tells him to
come
leave.
back up to the glass and you seem.
All right. He doesn't appear, just from this image right here, to be someone who is calm and kind of collective and everything. He already seemed a little frustrated. Honestly, if this is his woman, his sister, whoever this is, she's kind of holding him. She looked like she's trying to say, like, yo, just don't worry about it. Come on, let's go.
Frustrated, upset. You seem to be yelling.
Well, I was frustrated, upset, being removed from an establishment for no reason.
In the video, you can see Bradford and his.
So far, they walking away. The cop is coming out, following behind him. Fair, the cop isn't interacting at this point, so I don't think the cop can ask someone to leave and then walk out of the store and observe them to see what's going on. That's fair. I'm assuming if the cop asked him to leave, he probably got some type of guidance to do so from the owner of the convenience store that would effectively trespass this guy. A cop just can't tell you to leave someone else's establishment, so I'm assuming that's probably what happened. But he looks hot.
Friends walking to their vehicle. The officer approaches and.
All right. Now he's getting in the car, but the officer's walking up. I don't know why the officer's walking up. Like, real talk, if I'm watching this video, I'm like, the guy's clearly upset. He's clearly yelling. Anytime you yelling at a window to the point where your breath is showing on the window, yeah, you probably a little hot. I have no clue why the officer is walking up. I think this is something that shouldn't have been done by the officer, because all it does is escalate the situation instead of de-escalate it. But he's walking up. Now, is the officer within his right to walk up there? The officer could walk over there. From this point, it doesn't seem as if he's giving them any orders or got anything drawn. So it's not necessarily wrong for the officer to walk to the guy, but when the guy's going to get in his car, the instructions were to leave. I think walking up to it does just elevate the situation instead of de-escalating.
And orders Bradford to get into the car.
Hey, he's getting in the car. This is actually stupid, I think, on the officer's part. The guy is getting into the car, and then he walks up to tells him to get in the car again, faster. Kind of dumb. But now we see he got the taser pulled out. He walks up to him here, orders him to get in the car. The guy looks like he's giving the cop some lip service.
And orders Bradford to get into the car.
Hey, you got 2 seconds.
Now he got the taser out. Right here is beautiful. This is the picture, if I'm representing this young man, that I want everybody to see. I'm literally going to my car. The officer walks up and tells me to get in your car, which is what I was doing. And he has a taser out. This is actually perfect because his hands are down. They are in his pocket. This is an image of him actually not looking aggressive. So far, so good for this gentleman.
Bradford's friends tried to intervene. And
all right. Again, now let's play it a little bit because I want to.
Bradford's friends tried to intervene. And think.
Now, okay. There's this is a situation where it's elevated. Everybody's anxious. Everybody's on edge. This guy's pissed off. The cop appeared to be a little bit scary because he's following the guy to his car for no real reason. When this young lady comes around and tells him to get in the car, trying to get someone away from a stressful situation like this is two things. She actually tried to push him in the car. The immediate response to trying to be pushed into a car when you're already upset is going to escalate whatever the situation is. I'm not saying this young lady's fault. She actually was trying to help him out. But trying to push this dude in a car, trying to push a grown-ass man into a car isn't going to do anything but de-escalate the situation. Escalate the situation.
Late.
Okay, so far here, I'm going to be honest. I think the video is right now at this point, even though the guy shows some aggressive behavior, I think it's fair. I don't see him doing anything to attack the officer, nor do I see him doing anything to attack this young lady. Actually, what it looks like to me, y'all let me know, it looks like he's actually trying to kind of restrain this young lady from keeping her hands on him and pushing him in the car. That's why you see him pointing at her. And this is my first time watching this video all the way through. So this is what I'm seeing so far. But so far, I'm gonna be honest, I don't see anything that puts the officer in some type of immediacy of being attacked, of bodily harm, risk of any type of threat.
Bradford is tased.
All right, now look like the guy's tased. Some people pepper spray, tasers, the shit don't just do anything. The guy's tased. He's tased,
Bradford,
but it still looks like he has his composure about him. So I don't really know how effective this taser was. It doesn't appear to be effective. Normally when you get tased, people's bodies just tense up and they just drop to the ground. Even after being tased, the fact that he's not contracted up, falling on the ground, shows that this taser had little to no impact. He's still not moving forward on this guy. It looked like he's actually just kind of sitting there and taking it.
Bradford is tased.
See, he's tased, but he's good. He's still not doing anything moving forward at this point.
And then advances.
Now he takes a step forward. He doesn't take a step forward until the officer initiates the initial physical interaction
Toward the officer.
Now he hits him with the second taser. This is the one that actually hits him in the eye.
Sit down! Sit down!
Bradford is tased a second time in the face. Moments later, the officer calls for backup, and Bradford reemerges.
If there's anyone watching the body cam video and they say, if his behavior weren't the way it was, we wouldn't be here, what would your response be to that?
Sure, I'm not here to sugarcoat the fact that Dominic was angry, but he's outside the store. That's the key. He followed his command. Police officers, quite frankly, are trained to not emotionally react, particularly when they're not being placed in danger.
There's actually another thing, too, that it causes me to question this officer's training. Normally, when a person is an officer, law enforcement officer, is tasing somebody, your actual training isn't to point it at someone's head. You can see the taser has a light on it, kind of like a red dot, and it's actually pointed at the guy's face. That's actually counter to law enforcement training, from my understanding. I've only been around law enforcement agents every year since 2010 with regard to my job. Normally, the instructions is if you're tasing someone, you want to aim for the torso because you have a wider target. You don't want to aim for somebody's head and one prong hits them in the forehead and the other one goes over. Now you have no connection for the electrical current to run. So even the officers, how he utilized the taser is questionable.
A Village of Robbins spokesperson says it does not comment on matters of litigation, but did
That's the right comment.
say in part, quote, a Robbins police officer was engaged in an incident outside a local business with an individual in which the police body camera shows was irate and noticeably intoxicated during the exchange, all of which was in response to the owner of the local business requesting the officer to have the individual leave.
See, I knew the owner had to tell him to leave because only the owner of the facility can trespass you.
Leave the store following a prior hostile exchange. An ambulance was called to the scene, and Bradford was taken to the hospital.
It was difficult to view, so to see, like blood on his face, his eye almost hanging out of his head. No mother, no father, no parent should ever have to see their child in that situation.
Bradford and his attorney now suing the Village of Robbins and the officer who tased him. They believe the use of force was unjustified. Bradford denies being intoxicated on the night in question, maintaining he was upset that he had to leave the store after being misidentified by the clerk. I asked Bradford why he advanced at the officer after being tased the first time.
I was stealing of a mode of protection because I had just witnessed this officer push my friend out of the way in order to tase me. It was very intense and everything was happening super fast.
I feel confident in saying like that video does not display his proudest moment. But in that video, I watched him and his friend walk away. So I don't understand why he pursued them.
I forgive you. Because I should.
All right, so let me know what y'all think. Do y'all think that the use of force, the use of the taser by the officer was warranted or justified? I think his attorney makes a good point. Of course, they are always going to say intoxicated, an odor of marijuana or something. There doesn't appear to be any evidence to support that he was intoxicated. I'll be honest, I think his reaction was clearly one of frustration. And this is one where he could have used a little verbal judo, and had he had a little bit more maturity in this situation, he would have just gotten a car. Especially once you see the officer walking towards you. Once you see the officer walking towards you, bruh, just get in the car, go to another convenience store, get your Newports, your blunts, your bubble gum, whatever the hell it is you was buying, you could have got it from somewhere else. So he didn't act in a manner that would de-escalate this situation. But as far as the officer's use of force, I'm going to say that the officer's use of force was probably a little bit more than what actually occurred. And I'm not talking about the initial tase. Was the second tase something that was justifiable? Second tase, he did appear to be approaching the guy. It could have been a threatening situation in that moment. It's arguable, but I think just as a matter of course, because of the first instance, because we got to look at this in the totality. It isn't just tase incident 1, tase incident 2. Which one? I think when you look at it in the totality, I think that a lot of things could have been avoided and de-escalated by the police officer, and he failed to do so. I think he failed to use the taser correctly on the second shot. I wouldn't be shocked if this actually resulted in something leading to a settlement where this young man is going to get broken off with some compensation. He is going to have a lot of hospital bills. There's going to be a lot of pain and suffering, emotional damage, all of that stuff. So he's probably going to get broke off. Y'all let me know in the comments if y'all think that the officer's use of the taser in instant 1 and instant 2, was it justified? Or do you think just in general, should the officer be liable for the injuries that were caused? Did the officer have a reasonable fear of threat or bodily harm? I want to say with regard to tasing incident number 2, there was some threat there, but I think again when we look at the totality, that the officer followed him out to the store. The young man was actually getting in the car. The officer appeared to draw the taser from the still image at a point where the young man didn't pose really any threat. He wasn't rushing him. He wasn't standing in an aggressive position. His fist wasn't balled up. You can see his hands. I don't know. I think it's going to work out from a legal standpoint for this young man. Now let's get into our last story, our cover topic for the day. We're going to talk about some roommates. And we did a video on roommates before where, roommates just are deleting their own roommates. And there was a man who stabbed his female roommate at a college housing apartment, something crazy like 20-something times. This is another instance. This is kind of giving some, it's kind of giving some stalkerish things. Y'all let me know. I'm going to just go ahead, play this, then we're going to jump in and talk about it. This is a crazy roommate situation, but this lady was actually purportedly her friend, the decedent's friend. They were friends, but I don't know. Friends do you like this? Who the hell need enemies? Let's check this story out. I think this story is in Atlanta as well.
We're best friends and roommates until one of them flipped and killed the other one. Now the Fulton County District Attorney's Office is taking us inside a bizarre murder conviction. Channel 2's investigative reporter Mark.
All right, real quick, just looking at that quick image of her in the room. This image right here, I'm just be honest, her actually look at this image of this lady in the room. She's looked like she's in an interrogation room, not an interviewing room. An interview is done to get facts related to something that happened. An interrogation is done to try to get a confession. So I'm assuming that they're interrogating her right now because all the evidence is probably pointing to this young lady. But how she is explaining this is a little so over the top that is given, yeah, you did something shady. It's a little too overly animated. You see her standing up and giving a representation of what happened. It's a little over the top. This isn't normal. Y'all probably seen a bunch of interrogation footage. People normally don't explain their stories like this. Normally, when you have an animated explanation of an event like this, it tends to suggest cap or someone being disingenuous.
Fulton County District Attorney's Office is taking us inside a bizarre murder conviction. Channel 2's
she explaining that shit like that's how I explain stuff with my boys. And then, man, we was in the spot, and then he started, and I was like moving out the way. Like she explaining it crazy. All right, let's go ahead and finish watching this video. But that short few seconds right there tells a lot to me.
Investigative reporter Mark Winnie has the murder in a Midtown townhome where the killer beat and then strangled the victim. Mark, this was in 2022.
Yeah, Fulton County's lead prosecutor on this case, Cassie Hall, says this case handled by the Fulton DA's major case unit involved two stunning women so tight they called each other sister, a relationship that ended in stunning fashion.
I told y'all, man, women. Yeah, how many stories we seen on this channel of women who were friends who grew up from the sandbox together and they running each other with the cars, going on vacations, leaving them to drown in water allegedly, giving them blunt force trauma and choking them out. That shit crazy, bro. Yeah, women, y'all keep y'all head on the swivel when y'all around y'all best friends, because that shit get kind of crazy. I'm not saying guys don't do it too, but damn, ladies, this shit is crazy.
In murder.
Shameria was so fun, loving, caring, giving, just goofy, smiling all the time, just down to earth, loving girl.
The tragic story of Mimi and Mo. Okesha Range, nicknamed Mo, was so controlling of her roommate Shameria Mimi Fletcher, attempting to isolate her from friends and family. It was like she had a stranglehold on Mimi's life. But when Mimi broke...
Why is the commentator talking like he's doing sports broadcasting? But apparently this defendant exerted an unusual amount of control over her roommates, the victim, the decedent in this case, life. If you got a roommate, your roommate trying to isolate you from seeing people, you either need to be able to whip their ass or get the hell out of there. You should not stay around because that's crazy. I had roommates in my day growing up, and I didn't give a damn what they did as long as they left me the hell alone. It's crazy.
On Mimi's life, but when Mimi broke free by scheduling a trip without Mo,
an annual trip that she had missed prior years because of this defendant.
Okesha Range literally strangled Ms. Fletcher at the Midtown condo where they lived, says Fulton County Chief Senior Assistant District Attorney Cassie Hall.
She beat her where she had contusions all over her body from her head to her feet, and then after that, she strangled her to death.
Prosecutor Hall says Ms. Orang suggested she and the victim had been play fighting and Mo kicked Mimi.
I said, look, quit playing, and I kicked.
But that Mimi...
That don't even make no damn sense. All right, two things real quick. The fact that she gave this girl major contusions, blunt force trauma, and choked her out is a few things. It could be a few things. It could be one, maybe she actually was just substantially bigger and stronger than this young lady. Or it could be that they were equal in size, but the lady just didn't have squabs. Maybe she could have, the initial impact could have been something from behind where the victim couldn't recover from it. Or it could be an instance, this happens a lot, where people are actually so scared of someone, they can't even go into a mode of trying to defend themselves. Like, they just kind of allow it to happen. They may just cower in the corner and have their hands up like, please don't stop. So that's actually crazy of this young lady. And the fact that she's trying to explain it as if we were play fighting and I kicked her, that's fucking crazy. What grown-ass adult women roommates play fight? Like that's actually that it makes no sense whatsoever.
Mimi.
I said, look, wait, and I can't.
But that Mimi was alive and talking after that, but that doesn't explain the choking.
According to my client, no, it did not upset her. She did not have any issues with her going on a trip.
Defense attorney Anton Rowe.
Ms. Range does, in fact, continue to maintain her innocence of all charges and allegations.
Oh my gosh, I can't even. I'm seeing.
What her lawyer said is that my client's story doesn't make any sense. What he didn't say was, he didn't say, we'll prove her innocence in a court of law. He just said, my client continues to maintain her innocence, which means that these facts and what she's saying, what my client is saying, sound like some bullshit. That's essentially what he said.
Ms. Range does, in fact, continue to maintain her innocence of all charges and allegations.
Oh my gosh, I can't even. I'm seizing.
Ms. Hall says Mo Range frequently feigned illness to manipulate Mimi Fletcher. And in 2 Atlanta police interviews, Mo acted as if she was having seizures. But
the way she explained this story, that shit just says guilty, bro. Like, all of that is just too extra, man. No normal person, generally, maybe on a one-off, but normally people don't explain shit like that the way she explained it.
the prosecution used that against her, playing excerpts at Keisha Range's recent trial, which culminated in a conviction for murder and a life without parole sentence.
She still maintains that she's never faked any type of seizures. She did, in fact, have real illnesses.
We roommate together. They seem to have a great relationship.
Antoinette Degree told us she roomed with both women about 10 months and testified for the prosecution.
I wanted justice for Mimi because during the time that I was in her space, I didn't feel like she was being treated fair in the friendship.
Was it controlling?
Very controlling.
Ms. Hall says for years while Mo Range roomed with Mimi, Mo mooched off Mimi, whose personality sparkled so much she had been elected president of the Eta Mu chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority at Georgia State.
Keisha Range didn't buy herself food. She didn't pay any rent. She didn't have a source of income.
Being a freeloader does not equal a murderer.
But Ms. Hall says barring a successful appeal, the state of Georgia should be feeding and housing Mo for the rest of her earthly life.
My client has directed me to file a motion for new trial, which indicates that she will be appealing the case.
That's exactly how you talk when your client full of shit. Your Honor, at this point, my client is imploring that we ask the court for. That means my client is asking for something that they probably don't deserve or that has no legal basis, but I have an obligation to do it as an attorney. If you say, hey, I want you to file an appeal, regardless of whether there's a legal or factual basis, as an attorney, you have an obligation to file that appeal. And if you don't, it could lead to sanctions with the bar.
We have someone that becomes literally obsessed with a friend. And when that friend started pulling back, the only way that they could control them was to take their life.
I think when you see the signs multiple times, you have to leave.
Now, defense attorney Rose says he does not believe his client, Ms. Range, was controlling to the extent that Ms. Fletcher was isolated from family and friends. Ms. Degree says she witnessed Mo behave certain ways when Mimi's friends were around and when it came to drawing attention to her illnesses, that led Ms. Degree to conclude Mo was indeed controlling.
All right, real quick, we're going to pause it. We're going to pause it right there. Anybody, Bernie, you hilarious. Shout out to you. Anybody who's in an interrogation room and then explaining the crime and they do this pose right here, I'll actually get me off the screen. Remove me. Anybody in the interrogation room, let's move your comment out the way, Bernie. Shout out to you. If you do this pose right here during the interrogation, there's no story you can tell to potentially try to justify someone having physical evidence of essentially being beaten to death and then strangled. This pose right here says, Negro, whatever you saying is not making any sense. Every mannerism she had in her explanations, every mannerism she had in her story was absolutely terrible. We just gonna look at real quick. We're just gonna look at her mannerisms and how her mannerisms say, yeah, this is probably bullshit, whatever story she's telling. I can actually probably tell you the story that she's telling as we watch it.
The tragic
And
story
then,
of...
Oh, let's turn the volume down on this real quick. Yeah, we just need to see it. And then, you know, we was there, and I don't know what happened because we was playing, and I just kicked her. Dumbass story. But look at her mannerisms where she telling the cop we were play wrestling.
Without Mo.
An annual trip that she had missed prior years because of this defendant.
Keisha Range literally strangled Ms. Fletcher at the Midtown condo where they live, says Fulton County.
She strangled her to death.
Prosecutor Hall says Ms. O'Range suggested she and the victim had been play fighting and Mo kicked Mimi.
I said, look, quit playing, and I kicked.
But that Mimi was alive and talking after that, but that doesn't explain the choking.
According to my client, no, it did not upset her. She did not have any issues with her going.
Yeah, and when you squint, I got little eyes. When you say, according to my client, it means they full of shit. The look on his face, like, I gotta say this because I gotta say something. But according to my client, this, that. But this next one is all telling. It goes to show that whatever story she was telling while making these mannerisms was complete and utter bullshit.
Going on a trip.
Defense attorney Anton Rowe.
Ms. Range does, in fact, continue to maintain her innocence of all charges and allegations.
Oh my gosh, I can't even. I'm seizing.
Ms. Hall says Mo Range frequently feigned illness to manipulate Mimi Fletcher. And in 2 Atlanta police interviews, Mo acted as if she was having seizures. But the prosecution used that against her, playing excerpts at Keisha Range's recent trial, which culminated in a conviction for murder and a life without parole sentence.
The sentence that she got, life without parole, sounds about right to me. I mean, sounds about accurate to me. I think she got exactly what she deserved. It's actually terrible that this young lady probably, I'm assuming, lived in fear while she was with this. Because think about it, like you got a roommate who got no income, you aren't paying shit, and you control it. Like, yeah, she was probably, I'm assuming that the decedent was probably actually scared to leave the situation, or maybe in a position where she couldn't leave, but absolutely terrible. The big takeaway from this story is, when you have a roommate, you got to be really cautious with who you decide to live with, because they are going to have access to you in your most vulnerable moments. You sleeping, you in the shower, you on the toilet, you just like when you're in your home, your level of anticipation and being alert is most likely more decreased than at any other time during the day because you're in your home. So be careful with the roommates that you choose, especially y'all ladies, because ladies, we've seen so many stories of best friends killing their best friends, and it seems to happen a lot with women. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comment. I think that sentence was justified. That lady clearly needs to be off of the streets. Hey, I'm about to get out of here because your boy's tired. I had a long day. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. And as always, if you enjoyed this content, check out the video on the screen. There's going to be more content related to attorney reactions. And I'll probably end up chopping these videos up and put them out separately just so people don't got to watch the whole long 50 some odd minutes of this video. Y'all take care and be blessed. Be safe. Peace.